The NBA tried to control one of the most influential players in history, not because of basketball, but because of who he was off the court. If you enjoy stories that go beyond the game, the kind that reveal what really happens behind the perfect image leagues try to sell, then this channel is for you. Here, we don't just talk about stats or championships, we talk about power, narrative, and the moments when sports expose who's really in control. And today's story isn't comfortable, because it reveals something the NBA never liked to admit. The NBA has always built a carefully controlled image, a league where everything feels aligned with sponsors, media, and corporate interests. But there's a story that doesn't fit that mold. And it's not just any story. It's the story of Allen Iverson, one of the most impactful players of all time, who instead of being fully embraced, was constantly pressured to change. And here's the part that changes everything. The problem was never basketball. On the court, Iverson delivered everything: elite talent, intensity, iconic moments, and a real connection with millions of people. But off the court, he represented something the league couldn't control. He didn't follow the script, didn't fit the mold, and never asked for permission to be himself. And for a league built on image, that was dangerous. While fans saw an icon, the league saw a risk. A player who didn't just dominate the game, but influenced culture, behavior, and identity. And when that happens, the issue stops being about sports and becomes about control. So stay until the end, because what happened with Iverson isn't just a basketball story. It's about what happens when someone refuses to be shaped. Long before he became a star, Allen Iverson was already dealing with something most athletes never overcome: a label placed on him before he ever had a real chance. As a teenager, he found himself at the center of a situation marked by racial tension and public judgment. And from that moment on, his story started being written by others. It didn't matter who he actually was. The world had already decided who he was supposed to be. That kind of label changes everything. Because when someone is judged that early, every mistake is magnified and every success never feels like enough. Iverson didn't enter college basketball as just another promising talent. He entered under scrutiny, constantly questioned, constantly tested. He wasn't just playing to win, he was playing to survive a narrative that was already against him. And yet, on the court, his talent was undeniable. It was impossible to ignore what he could do. But off the court, the system never stopped treating him like a risk. And that creates a tension that follows him throughout his entire career. Because while he kept proving he was special, the world around him kept trying to prove otherwise. And this is where everything starts to shift. Because when Iverson finally reaches the NBA, he doesn't arrive like most players do. He arrives carrying pressure, doubt, and a story that was already being used against him. And that changes everything that comes next, because this isn't just a rise, it's resistance from the very beginning. When Allen Iverson enters the NBA, it becomes obvious almost immediately. Something is different. He doesn't play like a rookie, doesn't respect hierarchy, and shows absolutely no fear. His speed, his handle, and his confidence create a style that simply didn't exist at that level. He wasn't just playing, he was challenging the entire system. Then comes the moment that changes everything. The matchup against Michael Jordan wasn't just another game, it was symbolic. And when Iverson hits that crossover, he's not just shaking the greatest player in the world, he's sending a message. A new generation wasn't arriving to ask for space, it was arriving to take it. But while fans were amazed, the league was uncomfortable. Because the talent was undeniable. But everything that came with it wasn't controllable. Iverson didn't fit the image the NBA had always promoted. He didn't soften who he was, didn't adjust his behavior, and didn't try to meet expectations. He simply existed on his own terms. And that's where the conflict truly begins. Because the league realizes it's not just dealing with a generational talent, it's dealing with something much harder to control. A player who changes the game on the court and starts influencing everything off it. And when that happens, the problem stops being basketball and becomes cultural. What made Allen Iverson different wasn't just what he did on the court, it was everything he represented off it. In a league that had always pushed a clean, controlled, corporate-friendly image, Iverson showed up as the complete opposite. He wasn't just playing basketball, he was bringing a culture the NBA had never fully embraced. His style wasn't a marketing strategy, it was identity. The braids, the tattoos, the baggy clothes, the connection to hip-hop. None of it was designed to fit into the league's image. It was real, and that's exactly what made it uncomfortable. Because controlling players is one thing, controlling culture is something else entirely. And by the time the NBA realized that, the impact had already spread too far. By 2001, everything about Allen Iverson reached another level. This wasn't just about talent anymore. It was about endurance, pain, and defiance, playing through injuries, carrying an entire team, and still performing at an elite level. Iverson turned effort into identity. Every game felt like a fight, and he never backed down. Leading the Philadelphia 76ers to the finals, he put a team nobody believed in on the biggest stage. Waiting on the other side were the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most dominant teams ever assembled. For most players, this would have been the end of the story. But for Iverson, it was something else entirely. Game 1 became a statement. Against all expectations, he dominated, took over the game, and pushed it into overtime. And then came the moment that defined everything. The shot. The defender on the floor. The step over. It wasn't just disrespect, it was symbolic. In that moment, Iverson wasn't just beating a defender. He was stepping over every doubt, every criticism, every narrative that had followed him. But even at his peak, something felt off. Because while he was proving himself as one of the best in the world, he was also becoming impossible to control. And for the league, that created a dangerous contradiction. How do you promote a global icon that doesn't represent what you want him to represent? Iverson's rise didn't just bring attention, it forced a reaction. Because at that point, his impact was too big to ignore. And that's when the NBA started pushing back. Not through praise, but through rules. Rules that were officially for everyone, but clearly aimed at something very specific. The introduction of the dress code wasn't just about professionalism, it was about control. Suddenly, the way players dressed became regulated, and the culture Iverson represented was pushed out of the spotlight. And even if it was never openly said, everyone knew who that shift was really about. At the same time, the media amplified a narrative that had been building for years. Conversations about attitude, discipline, and professionalism started to overshadow everything he was doing on the court. Slowly, the focus shifted away from his greatness and toward a version of him that was easier to criticize. And this is where things get deeper. Because once a narrative is repeated enough, it starts to feel like truth. What was happening to Iverson wasn't just criticism, it was framing. And when a system decides how you're seen, the game changes completely. There's a moment in Allen Iverson's career that almost everyone thinks they understand. A press conference that turned into a meme, a joke, and a symbol of unprofessionalism. But what most people don't know is what was actually happening behind it. At that time, Iverson was dealing with the loss of someone very close to him. He was emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, and still being pushed by the media about practice, discipline, and expectations. And in that moment, what came out wasn't arrogance, it was frustration, pain, and exhaustion. But that context never made it to the headlines. The media took clips, repeated the most controversial parts, and built a narrative that fit what people already believed. Iverson became the guy who didn't care, the guy who didn't take things seriously. And that version spread fast, because it was easier to accept. And this is where the damage really happens, because once a moment like that gets turned into a narrative, it doesn't go away. It follows you. And for Iverson, it became another piece of a story that was never fully true, but always repeated. While the NBA was trying to control Allen Iverson, something much bigger was already happening. His influence had gone beyond the league, beyond the games, beyond anything they could regulate. It was in the streets, in playgrounds, in how an entire generation started to see the game. The league could create rules, adjust policies, and shape narratives, but it couldn't stop connection. And Iverson had something the NBA couldn't manufacture: authenticity. People didn't just watch him, they felt him. And that kind of connection is stronger than any system. Other players started noticing too. The way Iverson carried himself opened doors for a new kind of expression. What was once criticized slowly became accepted, and eventually it became normal. And that's when everything shifted. Because when the culture changes, the system has two choices: resist or adapt. And eventually, the NBA realized it didn't have control anymore. Over time, everything the NBA once tried to control started becoming impossible to ignore. Allen Iverson's influence didn't fade, it expanded. The style, the attitude, the authenticity, everything that was once criticized became part of the league itself. Today, you can see his impact everywhere. Players expressing themselves, controlling their image, embracing individuality, all of it traces back to what Iverson represented. The league didn't erase him, it absorbed him. And that's the real turning point. Because Iverson didn't change to fit the NBA changed to survive what Iverson started. Today, Allen Iverson is respected across the world. But that respect wasn't given. It was earned through resistance. Through years of criticism, pressure, and attempts to reshape who he was, his legacy goes far beyond stats or awards. He changed how players see themselves, how they express themselves, and how they connect with fans. He didn't just play the game. He changed what the game looked like. In the end, Iverson may have lost battles along the way, but he won something bigger. He won the cultural war. And now the question is yours. Did the NBA ever truly understand Allen Iverson? Or did it just adapt because it had no other choice?